Welcome. Canada is the leading global exporter of cereal commodities, with 28.7 million tons of wheat expected to reach over 80 international markets in 2025 and 2026. Canada's on track to be the third largest wheat exporter and the number one exporter of high quality, high protein wheat in the world. Canada also proudly holds the position as the world's number one exporter of durum wheat and oats. Hello, I'm Ellen Pruden, Vice President of Communications and Value Chain Relations here at Cereals Canada. Welcome to our webinar, Securing Global Markets for Canadian Wheat. But before we start, let's learn a little bit about Cereals Canada.
We know Canadian cereals. Not those cereals, these cereals. The kind millions of people rely on for their business, for their livelihood, for every meal of the day. We're proud because Canadian farmers grow the highest quality wheat, barley, and oats in the world.
And we're not just saying that.
We have the data that proves it, because that's what the world needs. Information from experts who know precisely how to turn this into this, and this, and this. It's why we nurture relationships before the seed is even planted. Because when we succeed, Canadian farmers succeed. So do developers, processors, customers, and exporters in over 80 countries all over the globe. So let's keep growing. The best in the world is only getting better.
Just a few housekeeping items before we start. Interpretation is available in French, and this can be selected by clicking the globe symbol option at the bottom of the screen, as shown on the slide, and selecting your language. The Q&A, we'll have a Q&A at the end of our presentations, and you're welcome to submit your questions for our experts throughout the webinar. We'll be taking questions using the Q&A function only. You can find that near the bottom of your screen in the center. And if we don't answer one of your questions during this webinar, we'll respond to you by email. Please ensure that you're logged on with your email address so we can get in touch with you. And if you think of a question afterwards, please reach out to us. Our contact information can be found at cerealscanada.ca. Okay. Now, here's a look at our agenda. We'll be talking about 6 markets today. Central America with a focus on Guatemala, Ecuador, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, and China. Our team will be discussing 3 things throughout the webinar: a bit about the market in comparison to Canada's competitors, buyer expectations and what they're looking for, and how trade and technical work supports the long-term market stability. Our approach reinforces Canada's role as a trusted supplier by promoting quality, consistency, and performance of Canadian cereals across the variety of market needs. This is how we protect and grow global demand. While Cereals Canada is responsible for wheat, durum, oats, and barley, today's webinar will be only focusing on non-durum wheat and durum. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues. We'll notify everyone once the recording is posted, and we'll be sending you a survey by email, as your feedback is important to us. As you heard, Cereals Canada is the national non-for-profit industry association representing the Canadian cereals grain value chain. We service the entire value chain from producers to exporters, life science companies, and processors. The Canadian cereal sector contributes $68.8 billion every year to the Canadian economy. It's more than communication services and aerospace. We value the work and the relationship that we have with government and stakeholders to provide timely, expert technical information and deliver the best-in-class customer experience. Last year, Cereals Canada engaged with 63 markets for Canadian cereals. This targeted outreach happens in market during the new crop trade and technical missions and programs that we hold at our facilities. We support our members in the industry with 6 technical labs located in downtown Winnipeg, staffed by our experts in milling, baking, pasta, noodle making, and technical analysis. There's no other place in Canada that's equipped and staffed to do this type of testing and provide the customer support for Canadian cereals, all under one roof. In just a few moments, you'll meet our members of the team who will be sharing with you the activities and insights in these core, secondary, and emerging markets. Every November, Cereals Canada publishes the new wheat crop report, which provides an in-depth analysis of the wheat crop. The report's available on the website and includes detailed technical data on the quality of CWRS, quad, CE, SRW, and wheat by specification. The new wheat crop report is presented to customers through webinars, virtual meetings, and during the in-market new crop trade and technical missions. Okay, now we're going to hear from our experts who bring a deep understanding of market dynamics and customer needs. They're going to share the insight into the 6 markets that we'll be discussing and our work on how we protect them. Welcome to the team. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists of experts. We have Elaine Sapunik, Vice President of Technical Services, Krista Zuzak, Director of Crop Protection and Production, Lisa Nemeth, Director of Market Support and Training, and Leif Carlson, Vice President of Markets and Trade. Welcome, everyone. Leif, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off for our first market.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak today, Ellen. As you noted in your introduction, Canadian wheat is exported into so many countries around the world. And I'd like to start the conversation today by talking about the region of Central America. This region includes countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. The larger millers in the region have operations in more than one country and are always planning and coordinating their purchases and logistics to service their operations across the region. Central America has been a growing market for Canadian wheat, and exports of Canadian wheat into Central America have increased a lot over the last decade. Looking back, we've gone from 124,000 tons in 2016 up to 900,000 tons in 2025. But this is a very competitive market, and over the last 5 years, Canada has been the largest supplier of wheat to these countries. We hold a market share of just under 60%. But we're competing with the U.S. in this market as well, and the U.S. holds the most of the remaining market share. Within the region of Central America, I do want to focus in on Guatemala. It's the most populous Central American country, and it's also the one where our Cereals Canada team visited this December. Guatemala is the largest single country for Canadian wheat in this region, and just as is the case for overall in Central America, our exports have increased sharply to Guatemala as well. Only 7 years ago, Guatemala had imported about 16,000 tons of Canadian wheat, and last year that number has grown to over 500,000 tons. That's a really significant pace of growth, and is close to a doubling of Canadian demand each year over that period. Bread is a staple food in Guatemala, and Canadian wheat is highly valued by Guatemalan millers for its quality and consistency. And Guatemala is also an exporter of bakery products to other Central American countries, as well as Mexico and the U.S. Lisa, you've had the opportunity to visit millers in Central America. What has that work been like?
Thanks, Leif. Yes, I did have the opportunity to visit Central America this past year. And we've also hosted participants from this region on programs here at Cereals Canada as well. Our work with the milling companies in Central America has predominantly focused on the company CMI Foods, and Molinos Modernos is the milling division of CMI Foods. And so they are the dominant miller in South America with a loyalty to Canadian quality. And as you mentioned, over 500,000 metric tons of Canadian wheat purchases, actually 800,000 tons in 23 and 2024. They import multiple classes from Canada: Canada Western Red Spring, CPSR, Canada Prairie Spring Red, Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter, and Canada Western Amber Durum. They also have purchases from the United States, including their durum wheat, hard red spring classes, and hard red winter classes, and soft wheat. So Cereals Canada has been working with CMI for many years to develop their understanding of the Canadian quality and to optimize the utilization of it with them in their facilities. Their buyer explained that he attended a program in 2018 here in Canada at our facilities, and he learned so much about Canadian wheat and the system supporting the quality and the regulatory system around that as well. So since then, he has increased purchases of Canadian wheat by over 600%. And Canadian wheat went from 9 to 63% of their total purchases, which is really great. The development of this market didn't happen overnight. As mentioned, he was first here in 2018. So we're going to continue to work with them and grow with them as they require new purchases as well. So market development activities have included for this company, CMI Foods, in 2024. We wanted to continue to assist them with development of their flour, pasta, and ramen markets, ramen noodle markets utilizing Canadian wheat. CMI is across Central America and has companies in Guatemala, but also Costa Rica, Panama, Dominican Republic, and El Salvador. To support this large volume of their Canadian purchases, there was a desire to present in market after not being in market for 10 years. A new crop seminar was held in Guatemala in 2025 to be able to engage with key members of their staff and other buyers in this region. The seminar was well attended by participants from across the region and multiple companies, and participants were engaged and grateful to have Canadian wheat represented to them. Cereals Canada has also engaged with Molinos Modernos at their mill, and we did that when we were there for the new crop visit. And we also visited another large mill called Grupo Sentia. This summer, we will be welcoming participants from Central America for our 2026 Cereals Canada Latin America program. We received participant nominations for this program and also our international program from our export members. So I'd like to just take a second to thank them for all their efforts on this. And in all our markets, Cereals Canada works closely with our trade commissioners and Canadian embassy staff. We really value our relationships with trade commissioners as they are our in-market presence. They speak the local language and are extremely helpful in facilitating for our planning for customer engagement. So thank you to all the trade commissioners. Specifically in Guatemala, and because this was the first time we'd been there for a while, it was a lot of work. I wanted to thank two staff from the Canadian Embassy there, Jennifer Cachon and Anne-Marie Rebea, for their support. So back to you, Leif.
Well, thanks for that, Lisa. And I too really have had great experiences working with our trade commissioners in markets that I've visited, and their valuable work is so important to support Team Canada. And I know that we're not just active in Central America, and Canada has developed new opportunities elsewhere in Latin America, and we've seen demand growth and closer relationships with with customers elsewhere. And I want to highlight Ecuador for our audience. Over the past 5 years, Canada's exported about 850,000 tons of non-durum wheat to Ecuador on average. And this actually makes Ecuador one of our biggest wheat export markets. And it represents about 4% of our total average non-durum wheat exports. The main class that Ecuador has bought from Canada has been Canada Western Red Spring, or CWRS, which is used to produce flour for the production of baked goods. But in recent years, Ecuador has also increased their purchases of soft wheat from Ontario. And this really makes Ecuador an important market for all wheat producers across Canada. In Ecuador, they're using about 60% of their wheat to transform into baked products, about 30% used for pasta, and the rest for cookies and biscuits. Pasta producers in Ecuador will also use CWRS to make a fine semolina for a lower priced pasta line. Ecuadorian mills will also blend wheats from different suppliers around the world and be able to blend wheats with different proteins and qualities. And what the reason why they do this is because they can still make high quality products, but reduce the average price for bakery and pasta products. And that's important to access all the market segments in Ecuador. Canada is the leading supplier of non-durum wheat to Ecuador. And we're really proud to be a leader in wheat trade to Ecuador. And we were also, it's been so encouraging to see that Canada, as a country, has worked to deepen our trade relationship with Ecuador, including at the government-to-government level. Canada and Ecuador have agreed to the text of a new Canada-Ecuador free trade agreement that's going to build new opportunities for Canadian businesses in Ecuador. And what I want our audience to know is that wheat is a critical part of that Canada-Ecuador trade. Wheat has long been Canada's biggest export to Ecuador, 8 times larger than the next largest product category. And I like to think that this trade relationship that Canada has built through trading wheat has helped bring us together to get that larger FTA done. And I hope that this agreement can be ratified in a timely manner. Lisa, I love talking about the larger context about Ecuador, but I know that you've had the opportunity to visit customers there a few times in your career. And I'd like to ask you what you think of when you think of Ecuador.
Thanks, Leif. I have been very fortunate to travel to Ecuador multiple times. Beautiful country. And when I think of Ecuador, I also think of how delicious their bread is and how Ecuadorians love their bread. There is growth in the market with bread consumption forecast to increase by almost 1% annually to reach over 500,000 tons by 2029. So Ecuador virtually imports all the wheat it consumes, about 99%. And I'd like to speak to the work we do directly with one of the largest milling companies so that their flour to make all this bread is as good as it can be for their consumers. Moderna Alimentos is a large milling company in Ecuador. And I'd like to share a story about this company and their relationship with Canadian wheat. In 2023, I received a call from Moderna Alimentos. They were calling to share that they had submitted their industrial bread flour called Pana Plus into a European institution called the Taste Institute, and it was awarded the Superior Taste Award. They wanted us to know about this award because the product was made up of 100% Canadian flour. So this was also a win for Canadian wheat. And when we visited their plant in 2024, I brought back home a flour bag that illustrates their high regard for Canadian wheat. So I'm going to show the bag, and I'm hoping everybody can see what I'm showing you, but you can see the Canadian flag, hopefully, getting a bit of a glare. But there's wording underneath that little Canadian maple leaf that also says made with Canadian wheat right on the flour bag. So why is this important? Because in Ecuador, Canadian wheat is synonymous with quality. So a really great story about our wheat quality and the perception in Ecuador. And while bread is a staple there in Ecuador, there is also interest in learning more about Canadian wheat for pasta and noodles. And we have worked directly with Moderna Alimentos to provide technical support for these products as well. They've reached out twice to request training for their end-use customers for pasta and noodles. And this was done on a cost share or fee-for-service basis. So it really shows their confidence also in Cereals Canada and the industry's ability to provide technical support to their customers. Our most recent interaction in Ecuador was when we met with 3 companies in Guayaquil last year. Of note, there was another company called Grupo Danik, who is a new owner of a mill that's been in Ecuador for a long time called La Industria Harinera. This company is growing fast and looking to expand their milling capacity. Why is this important for us? It's because they use 100% CWRS, so great news for possible expansion, and we will continue to maintain contact with them to support them moving forward. We'll also continue to engage with this market in programming. I've already mentioned the Latin America program coming up, and at our new crop trade and technical mission in 2026. Grupo Superior is another large flour milling company located in Quito, and we alternate our new crop visits between Guayaquil and Quito so we can spend time with this important customer. And while I'm speaking about new crop missions, I also want to thank our grower member organizations, Alberta Grains, Sask Wheat, Manitoba Crop Alliance, and Grain Farmers of Ontario for supporting our programming and engaging with customers on these missions. The information that they and their producers who are traveling with us share directly with customers is so very important, and it is very well received. Back to you, Ellen.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Leif. If you didn't get a good look at that picture that Lisa shared, we have a report called Securing Global Markets for Canadian Wheat. It's on the Cereals Canada website under resources, and you can download it there. Incredible stuff, Lisa. And just a reminder to put your questions into the Q&A function. We'll be taking them at the end. But let's head over to the Indo-Pacific region, and we're going to focus on the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam for our next set of discussions. And we're going to hear from Krista and Elaine, who will share the information about these markets and customer needs. Krista?
Thanks, Ellen. The Indo-Pacific region is really critical to our Canadian wheat exports, as they account for 33% of Canada's non-durum wheat exports over the past 5 years. So during this period, Canada exported an average of 6.6 million tons of non-durum wheat annually to the region. It's home to several key high-growth markets, so the Indo-Pacific represents a huge opportunity for trade diversification for our Canadian cereals. I'll start with Vietnam. It's an interesting market for Canadian wheat, both as a growth market, but also a country with market access conditions that we've been actively involved in. In 2019, Vietnam implemented phytosanitary restrictions on wheat as a result of Canada thistle seeds being on their national pest list. Phytosanitary restrictions were placed on wheat from countries where thistle was found. As a result, Canadian exports of wheat to Vietnam decreased sharply in the following years. This was until September of 2023, when Vietnam removed Canada thistle from its quarantine pest list, thus allowing bulk shipments of Canadian cereals to Vietnam to resume, effectively reopening the market. More recently, on the policy side, Vietnam has also introduced a new government decree. Decree 46, as it's called, has tightened regulations on food safety, moving from a self-declaration system to more of an active inspection regime. Implementation of this decree is pending the adoption and the entry into force of their amended food safety laws, so this will require monitoring of this important market. Last year in 2025, Australia was the leading supplier of non-durum wheat to Vietnam, representing 26% of their exports, followed by Brazil at 17%. The United States held a market share of 16%, and Canada held a market share of 10%. More recently, Ukraine and Brazil have also gained market share in the low-cost feed wheat segment at the expense of Australia. But Australia does remain the largest supplier of milling wheat to Vietnam. In 2024 alone, Vietnam consumed 629,000 tons of wheat flour for use as a food ingredient. Vietnam's consumption of wheat flour is also expected to grow by 2.5% annually to reach 712,000 tons by 2029. This increase in consumption is driven by economic growth, also economic trends like urbanization and an expanding middle class. In Vietnam, the top-end products are instant noodles and bread. And Vietnam is one of the top global consumers of instant noodles, while the bread segment is dominated by banh mi, a Vietnamese-style baguette sandwich that is higher volume than French baguettes. And now I'll pass it to Elaine. So Elaine, can you tell us the difference between a banh mi and a French baguette?
Thanks for mentioning banh mi, Krista. And if anyone has had any of these traditional Vietnamese sandwiches, you notice that the bread is quite unique. It might appear similar to a baguette, but it is different. The bread for banh mi has a light crispness on the outer edge or crust, and a light, airy texture in the crumb or the inner portion of the bread. And this is where the quality of CWRS with its high protein content and good protein quality is beneficial to contribute to this high quality end product that has the right quality for consumers. In January of this past year, I was part of a technical mission to Vietnam, which included two of my other colleagues and technical experts, Lindsay Bore, a manager of end products, and Norbert Cabral, our manager of milling. It's the first time in a very long time that Cereals Canada has been in this market. And it's the first time for this group of 3 travelers to visit Vietnam. We traveled to both the northern and southern regions of Vietnam to connect with 8 milling companies, and all of these visits were supported by the trade commissioners in both the north and southern regions. All the mills that we visited were the larger mills in each region, and these mills tended to be joint ventures with other mills or companies that have mills in other Indo-Pacific countries. So during each meeting, we were able to share information about Cereals Canada and the quality of the 2025 new crop. The majority of wheat exports to Vietnam come from countries other than Canada. And as Krista mentioned, Vietnam needs high quality, high protein wheat, and they are importing wheat from both Australia and the US. And one of the reasons why Australian wheat is chosen is because of the proximity between Australia and Vietnam, meaning that shipping logistics become quicker and easier. And there's also the suitability of Australian wheats for noodle production. Australian wheats tend to have white bran coats, which results in flour that's very white and bright, and therefore noodles are white and bright, which is a requirement. Canadian wheats tend to have red brown coats and flour that is not quite as bright as Australian. There's also a strong dependence on hard red spring wheat from the US. And as Krista mentioned, lower quality wheats coming in from the Black Sea region, including Ukraine and Russia, as well as Brazil. Like Australian and US wheats, CWRS from Canada is a high quality, high protein wheat, but it makes up a smaller percentage of the wheats that are used in Vietnam. And it would Canadian wheat, such as CWRS, would be blended with US hard red spring wheat and or the Australian wheats for production of flour to make banh mi, baguettes, and other baked products. Vietnam also makes use of soft wheats, those that have low protein content that are used for the production of cakes, cookies, and other products such as that. And these are primarily sourced from the US with lesser amounts coming from Australia. And we do have soft wheat in Canada that could meet this need of theirs. So we continue to ensure that we have participants from Vietnam as part of our programs. And over the past 2 years, we've had a few programs, our Vietnamese participants on our Cereals Canada program. So I'll turn it back to you, Krista.
Thanks, Elaine. Another one of the significant developments that I want to highlight to you in the Indo-Pacific that we've seen is the opening of the Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office, which is located in Manila. The office opened in 2024 to help the Canadian agriculture sector navigate complex regulatory landscapes, also to tackle sanitary and phytosanitary issues, and build long-term technical cooperation with local governments. For example, the recent Vietnam decree that I mentioned is just one example of where we at Cereals Canada would engage with the Indo-Pacific office to get a better understanding of that policy direction and the impact that it could have here in Canada. But I also want to talk more about the Philippines. So the Philippines is not only home to the hub of the Indo-Pacific office, but it's also an emerging market for Canadian non-durum wheat. Over the last 5 years, Australia was the leading supplier of non-durum wheat to the Philippines with a market share of 46%. The United States ranked second with a market share of 40%, and Canada held a market share of 6%. We understand that competition from the United States is strong, and the US has had a long-standing trade relationship with the Philippines, and it's their largest international market for their hard red spring wheat. During this period, the Philippines imported 360,000 tons of Canadian non-durum wheat per year on average. In 2025, Canada's non-durum wheat exports to the Philippines reached their highest level in 10 years, with sales over 500,000 tons. The Philippines is an established market for CWRS, but customers have also expressed interest in CPSR or other medium protein wheats and soft wheat. A growing consumption of wheat-based products there is driven by population growth, rising income levels, and the diversification of consumers' diets. There is a growing market for high-quality baked goods, such as cheese buns and garlic buns. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Elaine, to talk about market activities.
Thanks, Krista. In September of 2025, PAF Mill, which is a milling association in the Philippines, along with a Philippine milling company, General Milling Corporation, visited Cereals Canada to hold discussions regarding Canadian wheat. We heard that there was interest in purchasing Canadian wheat. However, they also expressed a need for technical support for their milling and their quality staff. And they also felt that the bakeries that they supplied flours to would also require technical support. And this is because there are quality differences between Canadian wheats and wheats from other countries, and these can impact how the wheat is milled and how the flour behaves when it's processed into a different end product. It's our role at Cereals Canada to provide technical support to millers, bakers, and others that are using our premium wheats. Whether it's troubleshooting, providing more technical information for them, or helping them in other ways, this is how the experts at Cereals Canada can provide support on behalf of our Canadian industry. Cereals Canada also visited the Philippines as part of its Indo-Pacific Technical Mission in early February of 2026. We conducted a seminar and several meetings with wheat milling companies. We provided information on quality analysis and bread processing, to a lot of different milling companies in the Philippines. We saw that there was a lot of interest regarding Canadian wheat quality, which was expressed by the attendees through their questions and their interactions with our experts. And this happened during coffee breaks, during the lunch hour. And these questions related to how does Canadian wheat perform when tested, or how does it achieve the necessary end product quality when a company is milling Canadian wheat. We had meetings with Pathmill plus 5 different milling companies, including Wellington Flour Mills, General Milling Corporation, San Miguel Foods, and Universal Robina Corporation, and one other, which was Philippine Foremost. And the unique thing about Philippine Foremost is that they're using 100% Canadian CWRS for their flour production for baked pan bread, and they've been doing that for over 5 years. Our takeaways from these discussions are that many of the companies have a willingness to try Canadian wheat. That includes not only CWRS, but it would also include Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter, or CESRW, from Eastern Canada. We have plans to return to the Philippines later this year so that we can continue our market development activities there. And this would include conducting a workshop that would consist of presentations and demonstrations using the expertise of our technical staff to help train the staff at Philippine milling companies in what the benefits are when they use Canadian wheat. Our goal is not only to focus on the benefits of Canadian wheat quality and how it differs from US wheat quality, but to also show the staff at mills how it can meet the quality requirements that they have. And we'll also conduct some meetings with milling companies. So our market development activities in the Philippines are focused on maintaining and hopefully increasing the pace of Canadian exports to the Philippines in the coming years. So I'm going to turn this back over to Leif, who's going to talk to you about Thailand, another stop on our Indo-Pacific technical mission.
Well, thanks, Elaine, and thanks for sharing the opportunities that the Philippines possesses. For Thailand, Canada's got a long-standing wheat trading relationship with Thailand, and Canadian wheat is established in that market. Over the past 5 years, Thailand has imported about 225,000 tons of Canadian non-durum wheat per year on average. Thai millers and food manufacturers need a variety of different types of wheat to make the food products for their customers. And we can see this diversity when we look at where they import their wheat from. Thailand buys a lot of wheat from Australia and from the United States. Looking at export history over the past 5 years, Australia has been the largest supplier of wheat to Thailand with about a 40% market share, the US coming in second with over 20%, and Canada having a smaller market share of just under 10%. And in Thailand, Australian wheats are preferred for noodle production, and US and Canada would be supplying wheat more for bakery and for biscuit production. One important thing about Thailand is that they're a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or the ASEAN. And the ASEAN is a group of 11 countries that work together to further economic development and cooperation between their countries within that region. And this is important right now because the government of Canada is currently working with the ASEAN representatives toward developing a trade agreement between these countries. And I also like to note that the ASEAN group includes Vietnam and the Philippines, which Krista and Elaine had spoken about. I think it's clear that keeping trade flowing, cereals trade flowing in particular, between Canada and the ASEAN countries benefits us all. And I think it's also important that Canada continue to work with millers in Thailand. Trade diversification is a an objective that's front of mind right now. And I think that when we look at what market diversification looks like in practice for international wheat markets, it includes Canada, continuing to access and export to some of the largest markets, but also not forgetting about smaller long-term customers like Thailand. And I really look forward to seeing a positive outcome from Canada's negotiations with the ASEAN. Elaine, you and your team got to be on the front lines working with the end users in Thailand. What activities did your team undertake when you were there?
Thanks, Leif. We were in Thailand, in Bangkok, in the first week of February, and this was also part of our recent Indo-Pacific technical mission. And as part of these market development activities, my colleagues and I had the opportunity to meet with 2 of the 14 wheat milling companies that are in Thailand. Both Thai flour mills and Kerry flour mills are among the top 10 flour mills in terms of their production, and both are located in Bangkok. We were able to meet with key senior staff at Thai flour mills, as well as some of their other milling and quality staff. And the key senior staff that we met with at Thai flour mills were really important for us getting this visit with them. They had been to Cereals Canada on previous programs that we've held, and they understood the benefits of using Canadian wheat and also understood the benefits of our technical experts and what we could bring in meeting with our staff. So as a result, some of their flours contain 100% Canadian wheat or a reasonable blend of Canadian wheat along with wheats of other origins. So the strong relationship that we have with Thai flour mills is one of the reasons why I mentioned we were able to meet with them. We provided them with a short seminar consisting of presentations about, again, wheat milling and quality analysis, bread and noodle processing using Canadian wheat. But we also had the opportunity to provide them with a demonstration on the use of a Buehler lab mill. And Buehler lab mills or lab mills in general are really important because they provide millers with a way to assess wheat quality without actually putting the wheat on their commercial mill. So our visit at Thai flour mills was really an excellent opportunity to discuss their wheat quality needs and also tour their facilities and see what they have in terms of quality assessment and milling equipment. Our second visit in Bangkok was to Kerry flour mills. They are part of a larger joint venture operation that's headquartered in Malaysia that has mills and other facilities in the Indo-Pacific region. And we were able to reconnect with one of the staff that had attended a Cereals Canada program back in 2024. So my colleagues and I were able to provide information on the quality of the 2025 new crop, and they indicated that Canadian wheat had been performing very well for them in vessels that they received in 2024, as well as vessels that they would be receiving. They had upcoming ones in 2025 of that crop. So they are currently using Canadian wheat along with wheats from other origins to make flours for both bread and noodles. And we also had a really great opportunity to tour their facilities and spend quite a bit of time in their end products lab. So this was really a great opportunity for us to understand what their wheat and flour quality needs are, and to understand what end products their flours were being used for. So staff at both Kerry flour mills and Thai flour mills have very good technical knowledge, and it's likely due to their involvement and participation on past Cereals Canada programs. And with that, I'm going to turn this discussion back to Krista, who's going to talk about work in China.
Thanks, Elaine. China has remained an important export market for Canadian non-durum wheat historically, but where we have seen a growing opportunity is in the durum wheat market. So although the Chinese pasta market is small in comparison to the rice and noodle markets, it is expected to grow fast. As of 2023, the pasta segment was forecast to grow at an annual rate of 11.9% between 2022 and 2027. So there is a strategic opening for Canadian durum into China. Canada has the best durum quality, and our technical team can provide the expertise and customer support for quad, including milling, semolina analysis, and pasta production. And to tell us more about this, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Krista. I agree that there's opportunities for Canada Western Amber Durum, or quad as we like to call it, wheat that shows the duality of China and how it represents a market that's not only a core market, but one that is also poised for emerging growth. Cereals Canada, as we've talked about, provides annual new crop seminars, and in China, we do that. And it was during this time in 2023, Cereals Canada was made aware that COFCO could be importing small quantities of quad for trialing in pasta applications. And for reference, COFCO is the main trading company in China that purchases grains for use by COFCO mills and processing companies. So COFCO recognizes Canada as not only the world's largest durum producer, but also the world's high quality durum producer. And our durum has excellent yellow color. The yellowness present in quad is unmatched by competitor durum and results in semolina and pasta products with also this very excellent yellow color. Quad also has high protein content and protein functionality. All of this is a testament to the excellent breeding programs we have here in Canada for durum, and of course, all of our other wheats as well. Cereals Canada wanted to ensure that China saw firsthand the quality of quad for their future use, and followed up by offering a technical exchange program in Winnipeg to COFCO focused on quad, and this happened in 2024. So their visit included presentations and demonstrations from our experts at Cereals Canada, and this was on durum wheat milling, wheat and semolina analysis, and pasta processing and analysis. To continue the momentum, a participant from China attended the 2025 Cereals Canada Durum program for further understanding of durum quality, but also to see the value chain and the support that comes from that value chain to ensure this quality. Also, a group of experts from Cereals Canada traveled to China in just last year, 2025, to further engage and support the millers and processors using quad in China at 2 different locations. These technical experts from Cereals Canada spent time at each facility and provided presentations on the quality and processing advantages of quad. They also had the chance to tour the facilities to understand the opportunity for any future support needs from us. So quad use in China for pasta production is very much in the beginning phase and is still growing. Pasta acceptance among consumers is slowly growing as it is seen as a luxury food, previously only available in restaurants. Now, single-serving pasta meals are available in grocery stores, making them more accessible to consumers. And I have another little show and tell for you. So this is the product, the box on the outside, very similar to what we would get here with cooking instructions on the other side. What's unique about this is it's not just pasta. It comes packaged with all the other ingredients needed to make the meal. So you have the spices, there's some cheese, there's oil, there's the actual pasta sauce. If this is a tomato and meat sauce. And then, of course, most importantly, the pasta with that really excellent yellow color. So this is packaged to help with preparation because it's something they're not as familiar with, but also to bring this full meal experience in one convenient purchase to them. So with hopes that this will take off, we will likely begin to see durum mills commissioned in China. Currently, they are using mills to produce semolina from quad, which are not specifically designed for semolina production. The purchase of quad and the growth of pasta in China will continue to be an evolution for the Chinese population. And Cereals Canada is going to make sure we're there to help China develop the technical expertise along the way and ensure that there are markets for our durum in China. Back to you, Ellen.
Thank you, Lisa. Love the show and tell. And I want to thank all of our presenters, Krista, Elaine, and Leif, and ask them to come up on screen. This is our time that we're going to take our questions that we've had come in. So it's wonderful to hear about the markets, the work that we're doing on behalf of the value chain. And it's just a snapshot, right? Like we've only talked about 6, but let's get into some of the questions. Okay, Leif, the first one is for you. Wheat is one of the most important staple foods in the world, we all agree, and Canada is that global player exporting a large share of the domestic production abroad in bulk form. Is there any opportunities to process more at home?
Well, thanks for that question, Ellen. And yeah, it's probably important to recognize that when we're talking about securing global markets for Canadian wheat, the importance of our domestic market. Canada is our own biggest customer. We in Canada will process more wheat into flour for our domestic use than goes into any of our export markets, and we want to see that. We also know that there's a lot of economic benefit from processing cereals at home, so we want to see that segment grow. And there has been growth. We've seen reinvestment in the milling sector within Canada. Plus, our Canadian milling sector is quite diverse with specialty mills and specialty food production facilities coming up. So there's certainly an opportunity to continue to grow our domestic processing sector. But it's also true that in Canada, we grow a lot more wheat than we need for our domestic consumption. And that, I think, means that Canada is always also going to be an exporter of wheat and durum.
Thank you, Leif. Another question came in. Krista, this one's for you. We didn't talk about the EU, and we've been hearing changes about their pesticide policy. Can you give us an update?
Sure. Thanks, Ellen, and thanks for the question. Yeah, the European Union policy shift is something we've definitely been following closely. We still do have concerns with, a more of a hazard-based approach being taken in the EU, and as they've moved from their farm to fork policies to their new updated vision for ag and food. I would say probably the most concerning parts that we're working through on the pesticide files have to do with reciprocity. So essentially pesticides that are no longer approved in the EU, also having issues with being able to export those products to the EU if there are residues there. So that's a concern on our export side, but also for our farmers and being able to still use these pesticides in Canada that have been reviewed and approved and their safety is proven. So that's something we're keeping an eye on. And that also goes hand in hand with our maximum residue limit. So these kind of policies can also result in the EU removing those MRLs. And that includes, pesticides that are registered here in Canada, but not the EU. So we can have concerns there as well, where we face misalignments in MRLs that can cause trade issues here in Canada.
Thanks, Krista. I know you'll be watching this closely and sharing back with the value chain. We'll take two more questions, but first I'm going to go to Elaine and then I'll go to Lisa. So Elaine, one of the questions that came in was, like how does the team work with customers? And so, we're assuming that millers know everything about milling. So how does the team work with customers?
Generally, it could simply be a meeting or a visit with customers, touring their facilities, sharing information, or workshops or seminars, something a little bit more formal. But really, when our technical experts are in market with a customer, we're trying to provide them with information. Although we can say high quality, high protein wheat is the same, whether it comes from the US or Australia, there are slight differences between those wheats. And our staff, our technical experts really have a really good handle on what those differences are and how we can share that information with customers so that they can best take advantage of the Canadian wheat benefits when they start incorporating it into their blends and to their milling operations.
Great, thank you. And I know the team does so much work with customers in market and at our facilities to continue that dialogue and discussion. Okay, Lisa, we'll end with you on this last question. So, we stated earlier that Canadian cereals go to 80 different countries, and with so many different markets that we're involved with, how do we choose the certain countries like the ones that we talked about today instead of others? Can you walk us through a little bit of our strategy?
Sure, thanks, Ellen. That's a great question. So we are strategic, I think is the main point to get across. And we work very closely with our members to determine the priorities. So Cereals Canada has a subcommittee of called a Market Support and Development Committee, and we meet on an annual basis and present market information to them. We look at what are the markets currently buying? How much of it is Canadian? Where do we think we have an opportunity to gain market share? We rank our markets as you mentioned some of the terminologies: core, secondary, emerging, and we want to make sure that we are reaching each of those markets or types of markets with the support that they need at the stage that they're at with Canadian wheat. So once we have all that information gathered, we meet with that committee. We propose, based on our budget, what we think we can do for the year. We sometimes have to reprioritize. Generally, we're pretty good at understanding what we need to do. And then we move forward with that. And then that's for the programming year, which goes through the summer. When we do the new crop missions, we wait until August to finalize, because depending on the crop, things can change. And then we meet with the committee again, and then we finalize our plans for our new crop meetings. So that's a really quick summary. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Leif's team supports with a lot of market analysis. So we move forward based on that.
Thanks, Lisa. And thank you to Elaine, Leif, Krista, and Lisa for sharing your insights. And I want to thank our members, our growers, our researchers, and all of you who joined us today. Thank you, and thank you for your questions. We could keep going, but I think we're at the hour, so we'll end our webinar here. But you can download the Securing Global Markets for Canadian Wheat report at cerealscanada.com. So make sure you get that report, and it shows a little more of the details and also the numbers that we talked about today. And, whether it's the Combine to Customer program that we offer for farmers, the grain industry overview course that we provide to Canadians working in agriculture, our presentations at the Prairie Grain Development Committee. Cereals Canada values the opportunity to engage with all of our stakeholders, and you here that joined us the webinar, and we really appreciate your time. So if you have any more questions, please reach out to us by email. Our contact information can be found at Cereals Canada. We'll be sending you a recording of the webinar after. Please share it with your colleagues. You'll also be receiving a survey from our team, and we look forward to the next time that we can connect, either by Zoom, email, or in person. So thank you so much for joining us here today, and have a good rest of your day.